A very good evening to you, and as always, we are glad that you choose to keep us company tonight. I'm Charotich Bernadette, ready to bring you up to speed with the news-making headlines across the globe. And as you know, we are all about the business. Here is a glance of all the news creating waves across the globe.
As a ministry, we are tasked with the responsibility of delivering at least 500,000 affordable housing units by the year 2022.
27th Blue Triangle Cement Kenya Homes Expo. It's housing for all. The African climate change story. Time to change the narrative. METZUS Group launch. It's group effort for the sake of universal healthcare. The Blue Triangle Cement Homes Expo in its 27th edition kicked off today at the KICC, the longest running Homes Expo in the region, as has been its tradition, brought together various players in the housing sector under the theme Homes Within Reach. Our field team was present for the official opening and filed the following story.
Chris Obure, the Chief Administrative Secretary, Transport and Infrastructure, while giving his keynote address to mark the event, pointed out at the timeliness of the Expo's theme.
The theme of this Expo, Homes Within Reach, resonates very well with one of the government's Big Four agenda of delivering affordable housing to Kenyans by the year 2022.
The CAS went on to note that housing remains to be a major challenge in the country, given the myriad of challenges the industry faces.
Ladies and gentlemen, development of housing is still a challenge in this country, owing to the high costs of inputs that go into housing, the major components being land, finance, and building materials. This is exacerbated by the fact that more than half of the population live below the poverty line. Further, we note that out of the estimated 50,000 houses developed each year in this country, over 80% are developed for the middle and high income earners. It's also noted that we have less than 25,000 mortgages out of a population of over 45 million people. This is an indication of a systemic problem that will require a substantial disruptive force to remedy.
We appreciate that.
He went on to add that for the situation to improve, very decisive action must be taken, including concerted efforts by the various stakeholders.
There is therefore an urgent need to correct this situation so that informal and low-salaried citizens in both rural and urban areas can access affordable housing. This calls for a close working relationship among all stakeholders so that we can together make homes within reach a reality.
He further noted that while his ministry is tasked with the delivery of the affordable housing pillar of the Big Four agenda and is equal to the task, he called upon other stakeholders to complement its efforts.
As a ministry, we are tasked with the responsibility of delivering at least 500,000 affordable housing units by the year 2022. I believe we possess the capacity to stand up to this task. I call upon all of you as stakeholders in this sector to assist in the attainment of this goal.
Whereas affordable housing dilemma poses a challenge, it creates vast opportunities, which the CAS was quick to point to the stakeholders present.
We are aware that Kenya is urbanizing rapidly, resulting in serious housing deficit in major urban centers. The demand for new housing is estimated at 200,000 housing units per year. This trend must be checked by ensuring we channel more resources and investments towards construction of appropriate housing to meet this demand. Additionally, a well-developed affordable housing framework has the potential to create a stimulus, since mass production of homes will create a construction boom that can provide numerous opportunities for the job market. Indeed, in other jurisdictions where affordable housing projects have been implemented, the impact to GDP has been significant. The program will also develop local industry by promoting use of locally sourced and available materials as well as services.
He further reiterated the government's commitment to the private sector by extending incentives to the players as a way to ensure that more resources are available to them.
In addition to provision of housing, as in the affordable housing program, the government is also committed to provide the much needed enabling incentives for housing development to all the stakeholders. As you may be aware, developers have now been relieved of National Environment Management Authority, that's NEMA, and the National Construction Authority levies. We hope this will boost housing supply by cutting high preliminary costs incurred by the developers and be able to plow the savings back to development of more units.
On his part, Daniel Ojijo, the executive chairman, Homes Universal, and the organizers of the expo noted the critical role that the expo plays in the housing sector.
The expo attracts the international market and addresses the acute housing shortage, supports the growth of the housing industry, and creates synergy between industry players.
He further noted that the theme for this year's efforts was inspired by the government's goodwill gesture on affordable housing and called upon all to support the undertaking given the magnitude of the problem.
The 27th Kenya Homes Expo theme is Homes for All. This was inspired by positive government initiative to provide social and affordable housing to the less privileged in our society under the Agenda 4. We all know that developers have faced a very huge challenge in providing houses that are below 3 million, that are decent and well located. It is important for all persons of goodwill to support this novel venture, and this expo provides that forum.
Throwing a curveball to the conversation was Emma Miloyo, President Architectural Association of Kenya, who challenged the government to open up the conversation on affordable housing and make it more holistic.
Very happy that for the first time, probably since independence, affordable housing is being talked about. It is about time that it was. But even as we talk about affordable housing, we must remember that housing is not only the element of the building. It has to be holistic. Government has to also work with other sectors of and arms of government to ensure that aspects of housing which are beyond the residential, that is whether it is health, whether it is school and education, that need to be provided for the 5 million people or so who will be accommodated under these houses, is there. And we need to see more activity in this regard, because a lot of the conversation has almost been in a silo. We need to see government talking to other arms of government. How many police stations are going to be there? How many schools are needed? From our quick math, based on standards expected internationally, we should have about 1,500 early childhood centers, ECD centers. We should have about 700 secondary schools. Where are those plans? Have we seen them? How is government engaging with private sector to put up these facilities? Because I cannot imagine that they would be able to do it all alone.
The ground is ripe for the attainment of affordable housing, a key pillar in the Big Four agenda by the government, if the talk will translate to the work. But the big question is, how well positioned are you to reap the gains it promises? For BrandPlus TV Business News, I am Daisy Wambua.
Relevant stakeholders in the oil, gas and energy sectors from across the continent today convened at the Safari Park Hotel in Nairobi for the Sub-Saharan Africa Oil, Gas and Energy Infrastructure Summit to deliberate on the preparedness of the oil, gas and energy sectors for the future of a sustainable development of Sub-Saharan Africa. Check out the report.
The key to resolving Sub-Saharan Africa energy infrastructure.
In the recent past, several African countries have discovered oil, including our nation, Kenya. However, one of the key challenges in the sector has always been human capital, as governments have been forced to import skilled labor. It's for this reason that John Wezi, CEO Syntech Limited Nigeria, pointed out that it's a high time Africa invests in its human capital as a way of resolving Sub-Saharan Africa energy infrastructure deficit.
Infrastructure has to do with having the right resources. The issue of capacity has to do with do we have the skill sets? What are the foundations both the public and the private sectors have put in place? What are the policies government have in place? How are the new education system supporting? I like to talk about STEM, science, technology, and engineering and mathematics. In Sub-Saharan Africa, what are our government policies on STEM courses from foundation to support the Sub-Saharan infrastructure deficit issue? So once we get that, then we're on track to be able to manage the needed infrastructure. Because getting STEM right from the younger secondary school age down to university is critical. What is the ratio or the percentage of Sub-Saharan kids, our children, that are doing STEM courses? We need to push that up among the female, especially the girls, so that there is a mixture and a balance for the future. So those are, in my view, those are the human capacity development issues, the foundation we need to put together.
That we have just to
Infrastructure is not the only deficit that continues to act as a stumbling block towards the growth and development of the oil, gas and energy sectors. According to John Olawale, representing the Director of Petroleum Resources Nigeria at the summit, the regulatory framework of the energy sector and more specifically the gas industry needs to be revisited given the importance of the energy source.
One of the key resources of Africa is gas. We are immensely endowed, and it is very important that we establish clear institutional, regulatory and legal framework in order to leverage the importance and the benefits of gas for Africa's development. In order to gain the maximum benefit from gas as a resource, the policies should be clear. So in Nigeria, we've got the National Gas Policy, which is now approved. It is anchored on 5 major key points, and that's lessons Africa should learn. First, the institutions that regulate and monitor, both regulatory and commercial, should be clearly spelled out. The roles and responsibility must be delineated so that there's no confusion and there's no ambiguity. The policy should clearly show what you want to do. Gas is a resource on its own merit. It's a commodity, and you should build an industry around gas. Gas can fuel industrial economy. So it should not just be subservient to oil, but a resource on its own. So issues on reserves growth, on domestic gas supply, for in-country use and regional development, high-value exports in form of LNG and pipeline gas to other neighboring countries, as well as gas flares out. This is very important. Across these measures, that's what Nigeria government is doing now, to ensure that we articulate policy direction and implement it so that we can leverage the importance of gas in the development of Nigeria and also for regional energy security.
As the world pushes towards sustainability, renewable energy holds the key that will go a long way in powering Africa's long-term development goals. To this end, Wesi reiterated that it's a high time change management is introduced to enhance adoption and usage of renewable energy in sub-Saharan Africa.
Renewable energy is the way to go for everybody globally, and it's growing at a fast pace. In fact, the market for renewable energy is in emerging markets. If you look at the emerging markets, sub-Saharan Africa will have the largest population. Now, for us to move at the pace that the world desires in order to meet the Sustainable Development Goals, item number 7, which talks about what? Affordable energy, clean energy, and sustainable. You get the point? We need to change the conversation, the way we currently are looking at implementing renewable energy. Who actually are we developing renewable energy for? It's for the younger generation. So we need to reach out to them and let people begin to change, to transit from the current energy sources to renewable energy. Change takes time. So my argument is that we need to understand the people issues for effecting change and bring it into infrastructure development, renewable specifically. So that's what I think we need to do. I think our governments, as well as all the players, both the manufacturers, the innovators, and everybody in the supply chain, we need to begin to deploy proper change management framework in getting renewables into sub-Saharan Africa. That's mine.
Even as the policymakers and other major players in the oil, gas and energy sectors meet to deliberate on their sustainability beyond this generation, it's paramount that each citizen is pulled into the conversation, given that it's only through them that the policies will translate into real-world impact.
On that energized note, let us head for a short commercial break, but do stay with us as we still have more news items lined up for you. Welcome back to the most comprehensive, exclusively business news bulletin. Thank you for staying with us. And now turning to matters climate change. For Africa to realize its sustainable development goals, it must factor in climate change and how to manage its impact on various sectors that are now economic drivers in the continent. This was the conversation as the curtains fell on the 7th Climate Change and Development in Africa Conference. Have a look at the story.
According to James Murombedzi, officer in charge of African Climate Policy Center, while climate change is part of the Sustainable Development Goals, it has a far-reaching implication on all the other Sustainable Development Goals.
Climate change is SDG 13, and the whole objective of SDG 13 is to ensure that firstly we manage emissions in a way that allows development to continue, and secondly that we are also able to support adaptation to already occurring climate change. But beyond it being a specific SDG, the impact of climate change is a threat to the achievement of all other SDGs.
He went on to point out that the far-reaching development and economic implications that climate change has had on the African continent.
We feel the effects of climate change through precipitation or through temperature. Precipitation, either we get too much rain, which results in flooding. We've seen several disasters across the continent in the last couple of years, or too little rain, which results in droughts, desertification, and so on. And temperature also leads to different types of problems. Climate change is also a threat to infrastructure, to energy generation, to agriculture. Most African economies are dependent on climate-sensitive sectors. And so climate change has got huge implications for the sustainable development of our continent.
It is, however, not all doom. Murombedzi goes on to say there is a silver lining to that cloud, given that responding to climate change presents opportunity for the African economies.
Responding to climate change also creates opportunities, opportunities for doing things differently. We recognize that Africa is still at a relatively early phase of development in infrastructure. we can avoid many of the mistakes that were made by more developed economies. We can avoid investing in carbon-intensive infrastructure. We can climate-proof the new infrastructure that we are going to be building. And we can also create new business opportunities and innovations in doing things better. So in other words, Africa has the opportunity to leapfrog to greener economies without necessarily going through a brown phase.
For this to happen, African countries need to invest in climate information services. To this regard, Dr. Muhammad Bamba, Senior Scientist Climate Modeling, Climate Change, WASCAL, noted that the information gathered by climate information services comes in handy in helping countries to do their economic planning.
Well, the socio-economic benefit can be many. A wiser model that we just discussed 2 days ago showed that if a country invests in CIS, it can gain more benefit than if they didn't really invest in it. So I'll take the sector which is mostly evident, which is agricultural sector. So the farmer that has to deal with dry spells and intense precipitation to avoid waterlogging, for example. Having this information well ahead will help him to plan, for example, right? And then find solutions to deal with this effect before they actually come. For example, if you're dealing with medium-term climate change, like the next 10, 15 years or 20 years, so if you have climate information, you can then plan for, let's say, some species, crop species, which are what we call climate crops ready, right? Climate ready crops. So that's how we call it. And these climate ready crops are more resilient to climate change, and of course they help to increase agricultural productivities. And this, of course, CIS will help you to do that. For example, give you different information for the different sectors. So you can find out which sector do you have to invest for more productivity, right? So I can actually suggest is city officials that have to plan for their infrastructure, right, to avoid loss and damages. So CIS can help them to find the best way to do that.
Further to this, Murombezi says it's equally a high time the conversation on climate change is brought down to the community level, given that they are the most impacted by climate change.
But yes, I agree with you. You also need to mobilize local communities, local governments, and other stakeholders such as the civil society, researchers, and scientists, because the management of climate cannot in fact be the responsibility of states alone. Everyone has to be involved. Local communities experience climate change in their daily lives. They are the most impacted by climate change in many different ways. And they are also doing something about it without the assistance of anyone. They are adapting their livelihoods, their agricultural systems, their distribution system, and so on. But of course, as you can imagine, the problem is so big that you also need interventions from governments, from civil society. You need finance, you need technology, and you need capacity. And there are many initiatives that have been developed and that are currently under implementation, which seek to support the local adaptation activities.
As the curtains finally fall on CCDA 7, it is imperative that action will be taken on all the deliberations reached if the continent is to achieve sustainable development. For BrandPlus TV Business News, I am Elsa Atieno.
The Women Entrepreneurship and Innovation Summit 2018 kicked off today at the Boma Hotel, Nairobi, with a call on women entrepreneurs to embrace changes in technology to grow their businesses in the increasingly digital world. The summit, whose theme is Opportunity Countdown, is seeking to provide women with information and networks for their entrepreneurial journey. Our reporter Daisy Wambua attended day one of the summit and filed the following report.
In gender and development studies.
The two-day summit will bring together diverse stakeholders to deliberate on the building blocks of an integrated and innovation-led economy, as well as connect women entrepreneurs with investors, corporates, and policymakers to facilitate their growth strategies for the region in the entrepreneurship space. George Washiuri, the keynote speaker at the event, as well as the founder and CEO of Optiven Group, say that the summit is providing a platform for women to identify the opportunities that are available in the entrepreneurship space because they have the potential to lead economic growth if they are empowered through proper policies.
This summit is also encouraging young women out there to be able to adopt entrepreneurship, to adopt a business, to be able to do business, because at the end of the day, the SMEs, the business owners are the people who are creating jobs, they're the people who are paying taxes, and we are hoping that as many more women come in to do business, to do what George Washuri is doing, we are going to see progress in Kenya and progress in Africa, because we have what it takes, we have resources.
In her opening remarks, the Expodium Africa founder and CEO Evelyn Kimathi said that women have ventured in the entrepreneurship space, but they are faced by a number of challenges which lead to the death of their businesses.
Women are warming up to business, and when they warm up to business, some start it as a hobby or a passion, but it starts to grow and they don't have the right skills. And when they start to grow, some are not sustainable, and when they become sustainable again, they're not able to scale them to the next level. And we started asking the questions, why? Why is that? Some are saying like they're limited or like no access to finance, information, innovation, sustainability. They didn't have the capacity, skills that they needed for that.
In building women-led businesses by identifying the available opportunities, we spoke to Sarah Karingi, a business networking expert at Global Networks Investment, who pointed out the importance of networking in businesses.
Networking, for any successful person, be it a man, be it a woman, you always meet people. And the people that you meet will either know something that you don't know, so they will help you to grow your business. They will help you to go beyond boundaries. They will help you to connect you to their opportunities. The others will work with you and encourage you.
She continued to point out on some of the ways that women can make the use of power of networking to improve or even boost their already existing businesses.
Women can harness this by getting to understand what other people are doing. And you can only do that if, number one, you read books. The other thing is you network. And how do you network? Showing interest in other people.
Even as the government continues to pledge its support to women through affirmative action, it is important for all relevant stakeholders to join hands in these efforts, given that an economically empowered woman has a greater impact not just on the household, but the nation at large. For BrandPlus TV Business News, I am Daisy Wambua.
METZUS, a wholly owned business of management sciences for health, was incorporated in Kenya in March last year as a group purchasing organization allowing independent pharmacies, pharmacy chains, hospitals, and other healthcare providers to buy goods and services at better prices than are usually available to them. Today, the team marked this milestone through the official launch at the Villarosa Kempinski. Our field team was present for the event, and here is the report.
It's very clear to see exactly how METZUS will improve.
The occasion brought together various stakeholders in the medical field who not only celebrated the milestone that the launch of METZUS signified for the industry, but also the pertinent issues surrounding the healthcare sector.
Patient perspective and also from...
While giving the keynote address on behalf of the Cabinet Secretary Health, CEO Poisons and Pharmacy Board, Dr. Fred Sioi, noted the very critical role that METZUS is playing in the attainment of universal healthcare, one of the pillars of the Big Four agenda by the government.
The contribution of METZUS towards attainment of universal health coverage by reducing overall costs and promotion of quality in the entire health commodity supply chain cannot be overemphasized.
He went on to add the government's commitment to ensuring that the population has access to healthcare, and even pointed out that they have put in measures towards the attainment of this goal.
The goal of the ministry is people to access health. Yeah, the people of this country should access health, and health should be of good quality. And medical products and health technologies is part of that. When I talk about medical products, it's the medicine, vaccines, and other, and then even diagnostics, the things that are used for diagnosis, that they should be available at a cost that is affordable. So if we get partners that share the same goal, they want our people to get medicines that are affordable and still retain the good quality, then we welcome them. And as I said in the speech, we've created a framework, the public-private partnership. It's a legal framework that enables these people to work within that framework. So I was here because of what MSH is doing, supporting us in achieving this goal.
In the 47 years that we've...
On her part, Marion Wentworth, CEO and President, Management Sciences for Health, said the initiative was meant to leverage the power of the private sector in hastening the attainment of universal health care.
What we're excited about doing in Kenya now is really taking the power of the private sector and using it to complement the other initiatives that have been going on for some time to achieve universal health coverage, one of the big four here in Kenya. It's an exciting, exciting opportunity to use those, to harness the various kinds of chains and hospitals and distributors that aren't necessarily able to work in harmony the same way in order to get to the point where they can deliver accessible, affordable, high-quality medicines and health for all.
Not only do we provide access.
On his part, Dr. Peter Kamuyu, CEO METZUS, emphasized on the importance of efficiency, affordability, and accessibility in healthcare matters and urged those present to ensure that the deliberations made translate in the real world.
When it comes to healthcare matters, I believe efficacy, affordability, and accessibility are instrumental. Our conversations this morning have touched on these three major areas, and it is therefore my hope that as we leave this room today, we will carry these discussions further, build on them and act on them, and make Kenya's healthcare sector great.
We're talking about the vision for the...
He went on to point out the importance of all stakeholders pulling together towards the attainment of this goal.
In order for us to move forward, we need concerted efforts from all major stakeholders in the industry. Majority of those are gathered here today. Thank you. This is the only way we can get together. Looking at the sectors represented here, we can say time is ripe for us to take the next turn. I've been telling my team, this today marks the end of the beginning. The launch of METZUS has therefore set the ball rolling for us.
Overall METZUS Group champion.
The launch indeed signifies an exciting time for the healthcare sector as various players rise above their individual interests to pursue universal healthcare for all and with it attainment of critical development goals.
They will be framed and put on Twitter.
Let's take a look at how the markets performed today. Here's a summary. That is a run-through of how the markets performed, but for a more in-depth analysis of the same, tune in tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. for My Next Big Bet with Rachel Nderitu and Karanja Daniel. Now, let's see how the weather looks like. Here's the report. That's it from our business news desk tonight, but do make sure to tune in at 10 p.m. for a rerun of this very same bulletin. See you tomorrow, same place and same time. But until then, think business, culture, lifestyle. Have a good night.